The cabin in the woods, the drive had been long, and by the time Eric and his friends reached the isolated cabin deep in the heart of Black Hollow Forest, the sun had already begun its descent. The golden rays of the evening sun barely penetrated the dense canopy, casting long, eerie shadows across the forest floor. The air carried a strange, metallic scent, faint, yet unmistakable. "This place is amazing," Jenna exclaimed, stepping onto the creaky wooden porch. She set her bags down and turned to the others. "We seriously needed this getaway. No cell service, no distractions, just us and nature." Mark stretched his arms, letting out a yawn, and a fully stocked fridge. "Let's get inside and get settled." The cabin was rustic but sturdy, built of aged logs with a stone chimney. It had stood there for decades, maybe longer. The front door groaned as Eric pushed it open, revealing a cozy interior with a stone fireplace, a kitchen, and a loft above with wooden beams arching across the ceiling. A musty but oddly comforting scent filled the space, yet beneath it, something sour lingered, like old, rotting meat. "Dibs on the loft," shouted Brian as he ran up the wooden stairs 2 at a time. Jenna rolled her eyes. "Of course. Anyway, let's unpack and start a fire. It gets cold fast in the woods." As the sun disappeared behind the treetops, the air turned frigid. They gathered around the fireplace, telling stories and laughing. The night was peaceful, save for the occasional rustling outside. At first, they dismissed it as wind moving through the trees, but as the hours passed, the noises grew more distinct. A heavy thud sounded against the side of the cabin. Everyone froze. "Probably a deer," Mark suggested, trying to sound casual, but his grip on his beer tightened. Then came another sound, a low, guttural growl, followed by a wet, slithering noise. Eric's heart pounded. He exchanged nervous glances with Jenna. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. Before anyone could respond, a loud, clawing scrape dragged across the front door. Jenna gasped, scooting closer to Mark. Brian jumped up, grabbing a flashlight. "It's probably just some animal," he said, moving toward the window. "I'll scare it off." He flicked the beam of light outside, scanning the darkness. The trees stood silent, their skeletal branches twisting in the wind. Then, something moved at the edge of the clearing. A pair of glowing yellow eyes stared back at them. Brian inhaled sharply. "Guys." Before he could finish, a massive shape lunged from the darkness, slamming into the cabin wall with such force that the entire structure shook. Something howled, a deep, guttural sound that sent ice-cold terror through their veins. A slow, steady dripping noise followed, and as Eric turned his head, he noticed something seeping through the cracks in the wall, a dark, viscous liquid. Blood. "Lock the doors," Eric shouted, rushing to barricade the entrance. Jenna fumbled with the deadbolt while Mark grabbed a kitchen knife. Brian stepped away from the window, his face pale. What the hell was that? Another growl reverberated through the night. Heavy footsteps circled the cabin, slow and deliberate, like a predator toying with its prey. "We should stay quiet," Jenna whispered. "Maybe it'll leave." A deep snarl shattered that hope. Suddenly, the front door buckled inward as powerful claws raked down its surface, splintering wood. Something massive loomed just beyond, its breathing ragged and primal. A clawed hand far too large to be human reached through the broken slats, grasping at the air. The hand was soaked in something thick and black, reeking of decay. Mark slashed at it with the knife. The creature let out an enraged roar and withdrew, but they knew it wouldn't be gone for long. Upstairs, Eric yelled. They sprinted up the stairs to the loft, slamming the wooden trapdoor shut behind them. Below, the creature prowled the cabin, sniffing the air. The floorboards creaked under its weight. It let out a snarl, then a powerful crash echoed through the house. It had knocked over furniture, searching for them. Something wet splattered against the walls, and an overwhelming, putrid stench filled the air. Jenna covered her mouth, stifling a sob. "We're trapped." "We have to wait it out," Eric whispered. "It can't stay forever." But then, as if answering his words, the creature let out a chilling, guttural lava sound that should have been impossible. A sound filled with knowing intelligence. The next moments were agonizingly slow. The creature continued its rampage downstairs, knocking over chairs, tearing apart cupboards. Then suddenly, silence. Mark leaned toward the trapdoor, listening. I think it's with unnatural speed. The beast slammed into the loft's wooden barrier, its snarling face visible through the gaps. Yellow eyes burned into them, fangs glistening with saliva, dripping with something dark and viscous. It let out a deafening roar and clawed at the wood, tearing chunks away. Its breath was a hot mix of rotten blood. "We have to fight." Brian grabbed an iron poker from the fireplace below and jabbed it through the gap, striking the beast's arm. The creature howled in pain and retreated momentarily. Now, Eric kicked the trapdoor open, and they leaped down, sprinting toward the back door. The creature recovered fast. They heard its massive form bounding after them. Jenna flung open the door, and they spilled outside into the frigid night. The full moon hung high above, bathing the forest in eerie silver light. "The car," Mark shouted, but their SUV sat over 50 yards away, past the thick underbrush. Behind them, the werewolf burst through the cabin door, wood splintering in its wake. It stood in the moonlight now, massive and hunched, its matted fur soaked in shadows and streaked with fresh blood. It wasn't just an animal. Its limbs were too long, its body too human yet entirely monstrous. It was smiling. The friends ran. Branches whipped at their faces as they tore through the underbrush, their breath coming in ragged gasps. Eric dared a glance back. Creature was right behind them, moving impossibly fast, its claws raking through the trees as it closed the distance. A crimson spray painted the leaves as it moved, its previous victims leaving their mark. Then Jenna screamed. She tripped, her ankle twisting as she fell to the ground. Mark and Eric turned back, grabbing her arms, trying to lift her, but it was too late. The werewolf was there. It loomed over them, its breath hot and foul. Jenna sobbed, helpless beneath its gaze. It raised a clawed hand, ready to strike. A gunshot rang through the night. The werewolf howled in pain, stumbling back. Another shot fired, hitting its shoulder. It turned toward the tree line where an old man stepped out, a smoking rifle in his hands. His face was lined with age, his expression grim. "Get to the car, now," he barked. Eric and Mark hauled Jenna to her feet and sprinted toward the vehicle. Behind them, the old man fired again, forcing the beast back. It snarled but didn't pursue, instead watching them with those glowing eyes, a look of amusement flickering in its monstrous face. The engine roared to life. Eric slammed the gas pedal, and they tore down the dirt road, leaving the cabin and the night mirror behind.